she's returning. She hasn't been here in a while, and I think it's about time we had her back on. But before I introduce her, want to make a couple of quick announcements. I want to give a shout out to our good friend David Pickering, who is at this moment lying in the hospital in Toulouse, France. And we just want to say, get well, David. We miss you. We love you. Going to see you in the spring. So hang in there and take care of yourself. Also, I wanted to let people know a couple of weeks ago, well, actually, I guess it's been a little longer than that now, a few weeks ago, we had a show on called about the alien autopsy special that was on Fox, and it was so controversial. And there's always been a lot of speculation about whether or not it was true, whether or not it was faked, what was the real deal on that. And one of my old pals and colleagues here in LA and Hollywood, another producer friend of mine, came on and agreed to talk anonymously about his dealings and his work on the alien autopsy. He didn't tell everything, but he did share a couple things that we didn't know before. On that show, as I said, he appeared anonymously. And unfortunately, this past Friday, he suddenly passed away. And so there's no need for anonymity anymore. And he was my good friend Dan Link. And going to miss him greatly. He was a wonderful guest and a good friend, good pal, good movie buddy. So going to miss him. Goodness gracious. It was just really strange and very, very unexpected. He is also a musician, and he had a gig on Friday night, and he didn't show up for the gig, and everyone knew that that was highly, highly unusual. And one of his friends had a key to his home and went in and found him there in bed. It appeared that he had never gotten out of bed that morning. So I'm hoping that it was a peaceful transition for him and that he is shining on gloriously wherever he is and looking down on us and having a good time listening to our show tonight. And on a lighter note, I just want to announce to all the Rennies out there, if you're a Rennie, you know who you are. If you don't know what a Rennie is, you're probably not one. But I'll tell you anyway. What it is a Rennie is a person who is somehow obsessed, a fan of, or engaged in researching the Rennes-le-Chateau, Rennes-le-Ban mysteries of France. And we're talking sort of about, basically, in common terms, the Da Vinci Code mysteries. But as we all know, those of us who are very involved in that study, the research and the story broke back in 1982 with the publication of the book Holy Blood, Holy Grail. And that began to draw people to that area of the country trying to solve these mysteries that the book presented. I just want to let everybody know, all the Rennies out there, that I have made a call for anyone who's interested in the Ren mysteries. Do your best to show up the first week of May. I'll be there, and it looks like a lot of us are showing up. And it's funny, when you go there, it's such a magical place that you always end up running into so many people that you never expected in the first place. But this way, I thought, well, geez, if we make a concerted effort to all get there at the same time, wouldn't it be, we'll just have a fest of exchange of ideas. We're going to have fun. Of course, we'll be drinking the local blanquette, and we will be hopefully listening to some amazing speakers. If there's a huge response, then I'm going to set up a day of events with some eminent speakers. There's so many in the area, and so many of them are just now showing up. So we may have more speakers than we know what to do with, but I'm hoping that that's our problem. Also, on the Friday night, which would be the 4th of May, we're going to be having a screening of the film Bloodline, which, as many of you know, I was the producer, and we'll have a Q&A following with myself as well as director Bruce Burgess. Now, he has almost confirmed, but we've got it penciled in. He's trying to get the time off, and he says if nothing else, he'll just come down for the screening and go right back to London and get back to work. But we're going to have a screening of Bloodline because we're commemorating the 10th anniversary of the release of the film. And we're also getting ready to re-release it. If you I know a lot of people have been asking me how they can get it. Well, you can't, but you will be able to pretty soon. I'm going to re-release it. And we're doing that in commemoration of the 10th anniversary of the film. And also in memoriam to our wonderful friend and colleague, Edward Flaherty, who just passed away a couple months back, who was our Paris producer on the film. And as many of you know Edward, many of you René's out there, because he used to always meet us down there, and in subsequent years, even after the filming of Bloodline, he got hooked on the region just like we all did. So we're going to have a little memorial ceremony for him, for those that are interested. And also, just the screening of the film itself will also honor him, because, as you might remember, he actually appears in the film. He acted as our translator a couple of times with some of the secret society members that we interviewed on the film Bloodline. So that's all the announcements I have. Boy, I've talked a lot longer than I thought. I didn't know I had it in me, because I tell you what, my guest tonight, I called her in desperation because I needed to get some of that energy that she puts out, and I could only be talking about psychic medium Danielle Egnew. Danielle, thank God you're here.
René, hi. Those were great announcements. I was like, has it been 10 years since the film came out? I cannot even believe that. That's amazing. Wow.
I can't either. Well, when I look in the mirror, I can tell you that it's been 10 years.
Honey, you don't look a day over fabulous. Come on now.
I hope nobody's going to notice. I'm going to have nice dim lighting there at the screening. But anyway, I'm really looking forward to it. I haven't even watched the film in a number of years, and I thought, well, I'm going to watch it before I go, and then I thought, no, I'm just going to watch it again fresh when I get there. I'm just hoping I don't get too emotional when we see Edward come on the screen, because gosh, I miss him terribly. I don't know what's been going on, but I've been losing a lot of friends lately, and I don't know what's up with that. But I want to talk to you about the year 2018 and what's coming up, because I heard right out of your own mouth that this was a year of transformation, and I'd love to know what that means, because I could certainly use some transforming.
Oh, hon. Well, the thing about the year of transformation, and let me back up just a touch here. Every year, right around October or so, I get this information from the angelic realm, and I do a tremendous amount of channeling of the angelic realm and angel beings, and they tell me what we've got to look forward to in this upcoming year for the next year, and that was in 2017. And they said it was the year of transformation. And what's so poignant about this year is that when the angels define transformation, if you're to break it down, and I think of myself like a translator, René, if you're to break it down in the angelic language, which isn't like our language at all, it really means more like new. The energy signature is more like new than coming from something to something else. It more means the year of brand new. However, the way humans don't understand that, especially if they've been in a place that's been rather dark. And we've been going through this ether in 2016 and 17, really in 2017, of really trying on that chaos and fear and rage. And for lack of a better way to put it, we've really been in a completely different dimension of consciousness for this last year. So this year of transformation is our final moving place into the full-blown feminine time frame. And we are in the time frame of the feminine. It doesn't mean that, gentlemen, you are ruled out and it's all about women. I mean, men and women both have female and masculine chi, and we were in a 100,000-year masculine cycle, which makes sense, right? If you think about it, René, we had to populate the earth and build roads and, spread the seed and get out there. And I mean, what are we going to do? Cultivate the bottom of the oceans now? I mean, what we need to do now is nurture what we have and develop and really bring up through the ranks what we have. So we're in the time frame of the feminine squarely. And we went through a 5-year ascension process starting in 2012. So we're not even in the shadow period of the feminine time frame. We are absolutely 100% smack in the feminine time frame now. And we are seeing that with spiritual dynamics like #MeToo and all of the Harvey Weinsteins that are getting released and fired. And we're seeing a really dramatic consciousness shift that really appeared to kind of come out of nowhere all of a sudden, except it wasn't coming out of nowhere. It's been coming on for quite a long time. So when we talk about 2018's year of transformation, what we're talking about is that these angels refer to this as we return to the original world or the old world, the original world. The old world really is more like what we think about like the 20th century and all the weird good old boy stuff. I mean, that outmoded way of being, just consciousness-wise, thinking about the self rather than the collective. That is the outmoded old world. So when we talk about 2018's year of transformation, it's absolutely fast results, big fast changes, huge swings in consciousness, just instantaneously. We're not going to have those big old 2-year ramp ups to everything. I mean, it's just kapow, there it is. And it's the new norm and it's the new standard. And I will tell you, René, the first part of this year, all the way through till June, is going to look a little bit like a crap rodeo. It's going to look a little weird and a little crazy because of these fast. Oh, it's gonna. However, it's good stuff, though. Okay, this is leading to amazing things in the second part of 2018. So that's just kind of a super broad sweep about what we've got to look at here. Yet we really do need to brace up for not getting our butts patted if we get our feelings hurt. Universe is just going to say, hey, suck it up, buttercup. This is the time frame of holding everybody up. So get over yourself and make yourself useful. Think of your grandma yelling at all the kids in the backyard. I don't want to hear it. Just pick up after yourself. Make yourself useful. That's 2018.
Wow. Well, I can kind of see that. I can see that happening around me and, in the things that I'm reading and seeing happening among the people that I know myself. But, in my dire need for your assistance, I kind of got ahead of myself a little bit. And I do want to tell people a little bit more about you. First of all, I want to let people know where they can find you. Now, your website is Danielle Egnew -advisor. Is that correct?
Yep. And my last name is Egnew. So it's Danielle Egnew-advisor.com. That's right.
That's it. Also, you can search around on Facebook too, like I so often do, but probably the best place. And do you mind just giving a little bit of background? I know you've done it a million times on
That's
yourself,
okay.
Exactly, what it is that you're about. Whenever I think of you, the term off-worlders always pops into my head because I remembered, hearing you use that term about some of the connections that you have with some of the beings. You call them off-worlders, which I guess could include extraterrestrials, angelic beings like you just mentioned, and, maybe interdimensional beings. So what is it that you do, and how do you communicate with spirits and with other entities?
Well, the media, when I am having fun doing this on television, they like to put the title Psychic/Medium under my name because most people know what a psychic is, right? They know that a medium talks to dead people or they talk to off-worlders or ETs or aliens or whatever you want to call them. I call them off-worlders. I think alien is rude. They've been here a lot longer than we have. So
we're the aliens.
Pretty much. We're the wonky hybrids that are still running around down here. So it's interesting. I really consider myself, René, to be a translator. I mean, that's really what I do. I translate for angelic beings, for off-worlders, like you said, interdimensional beings, dead people. I translate energy off of objects that could be left at a crime scene when I've had the opportunity to volunteer with law enforcement. Really, anything energetic has a vibration, and I decode vibrations to extract messages, and I really think of myself like a translator. However, most pop culture would call me a psychic and a medium. And I'm lucky to be able to do this job, and I have a beautiful opportunity to assist clients all over the world, and I love that. I live in Montana. I live where there's not very many people because being sensitive to vibration, people carry a lot of vibrations with them, René. So I like to just kind of roll back on the people sometimes. But that's what I do. That's literally what I do. And I have the opportunity I've done this on television for different networks, for different shows, different pilots. And I was very, very blessed and lucky to have been named Psychic of the Year a while ago in a magazine. And I mean, I've been able to come forward with some information that's just been helpful for people. And I'm not the only one. There's hundreds of people like me doing this job, and we're all doing a great job. And everybody gets a great opportunity to translate what they've got. So I'm part of that pool.
Wow. Well, now, how did you discover these abilities? Was it something that, you hear sometimes people say, oh, I was, in a bad car accident and, was unconscious. And then when I came to, I was psychic. Or was this something that you've been living with and sort of just come to know throughout your whole life?
I've always had this, and I, honest to God, thought everybody else had it in the same way that I did. And René, I really believe, because it's been my observation, that everybody is psychic to one degree or another. Everybody's sensitive. I mean, the human species, and girl, I deal with a lot of different beings and species of critters and entities of all kinds. And the human species is one of the few species out there that is gifted with empathy, the gift of empathy. And that doesn't always mean that somebody can be an empath, and that's an exaggerated form of the gift of empathy, which is awesome. It's a psychic gift. Yet humans are really all empaths to some degree or another. So we are always feeling one another. We are always feeling the earth. We are always feeling pings from space. And when you walk in a room and you just feel somebody looking at you, but technically there's no one there, but there's a spirit there. So honestly, I really thought that everybody was hearing what I was hearing, seeing what I was seeing, experiencing what I was experiencing. And it wasn't until much later in my life, that I was 17 years old, before I realized that I had a little different view master, perhaps, than everybody else at that particular time.
View master. That's funny. Well, now, what about with your family? Do you have family that's also psychic? A lot of times you'll hear that. You'll hear, I got my abilities from my grandmother or my grandfather.
Oh, yeah. I got double teamed genetically. My mother is extremely spiritually sensitive. She's a giant empath. She's very clairsentient. She just knows things. She has these big clairvoyant dreams that foretell the future. Of course, she would not necessarily refer to her that way, but that's exactly what she is. And my father is very, very empathic, and he actually he just retired actually, the healing arts in terms of being a psychotherapist. Yet his big focus was teaching doctors how to heal. Not cure, but the emotional and spiritual aspect of communicating healing to their individual, clients and whatnot. So, yeah, my grandpa used to see death masks on people. I come by it on both sides of my family, very much so.
Oh, that's interesting. That's really interesting. Now, you live up in the Northwest, in the wild and woolly country up there, in the Wild Wild West. Is that your home, or did you? Yes. I was living in, that's where I met you, you fabulous lady, down in Los Angeles.
Right. And I was down there for 11 years, and I'm from Montana, and I moved back to Montana, maybe 4 or 5 years ago or so. And it's just, and we refer to Montana as, we've got the Pacific Northwest, of course, up there in Washington and Idaho and whatnot. And we are the Old West. We are the Rocky Mountain West out here. And it's just beautiful and spacious. And it's got a lot of ley lines, a ton of UFOs, a ton of off-worlders, lots of elementals. I mean, it really is a paranormal hotbed out here. It's pretty cool.
But what about the attitudes? Like, for instance, I grew up in, I call it the South because we were south of the Mason-Dixon line, and Oklahomans always say they're from the South, whether or not we really are. But, it was very conservative. And, I was right smack dab in the middle of the Bible Belt. So things that, you're talking about elementals and psychic abilities and things like that were sort of not looked too well upon back in the day growing up. How was it for you in Montana?
Okay, so Montana is such a weird place. Like, I honest to God cannot think of another state, not even Wyoming. Wyoming's close, but it's still not like Montana, that I've been to that is like Montana. And it's very confusing for people because when they look at a map, like a political map, for instance, they'll say, oh, that's Montana, and Trump won Montana by 20 points, and it's a red state, and blah, blah, blah. Montana, it's a traditionally cowboy state, not like Texas. It's more like, if you can imagine the old Westerns, the culture is very, very friendly. And even though you might have a very, very highly conservative neighbor, and I might be very non-conservative, kind of the unspoken credo out in Montana is don't take my land or my gun and just be a good person and don't victimize anybody else and we'll get along. You live your life, I'll live. They call it the live and let live state.
I was just getting ready to say sort of a live and let live kind of attitude.
Yeah. And, of course.
Which is the way it should be. I mean, not everyone has to think the way I do, and I certainly don't have to think the way you do or anyone else. I think we're all entitled to our own opinions and our own thoughts. And I guess I'm just a little disheartened by all the discord, that we've seen this past year. And I just hope there's some way that we can see our way past that and find some common ground. I just think it'd be wonderful.
You might find this. I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you. It just made me think of something, though, love. You might find this interesting. I'm obviously not a politician, right? I'm a media figure. I'm a psychic. I'm a medium. I was a musician who was signed forever, and then I came out of the closet as a psychic. Yet, I would tell you that we have this 2018 year of transformation is going to directly affect how people address politics. I even ran for mayor of my hometown this year. I ran for mayor of Billings.
Amazing.
And Billings, Montana is the largest city in a couple of states. We have 110,000 people here, which is, not very big compared to other states and cities. Yet if you think about it, that is the largest city in a 2-state area here. Wow. And so I ran for mayor, and you would think, gosh, well, I'm a pretty outside the box candidate in general. I'm a psychic. I'm married to a woman. I'm typically a blue voter, not a red voter. If you had to break it down to those old world categories, which, by the way, in 2018 are kind of going to go by the wayside, which I'm really excited about. And my campaign slogan in Billings, Montana, was "Lead with Love." And my campaign signs, they weren't red or blue, they were yellow and purple, because yellow is for the solar plexus chakra and the heart chakra, and purple is the crown chakra, which represents God and knowledge. And I did not get through the primary. However, our campaign, it wasn't just mine, I had tremendous volunteers. Our campaign made such a big difference that it actually changed the culture of the rest of the election. And even the 2 remaining candidates, one of them who is a veteran politician and traditionally had won elections in the state at a state level by heavy negative campaigning, I just absolutely went into it, and in the primaries, told all of the people I was running with, I said, you know what? I am not here to run against any one of you. We are all incredibly qualified in our own ways. I am here to present my perspective to the voters here in Montana And the voters get to choose their perspective. So I'm not running against anybody. I am running with my own ideas. And I encourage everybody else to do that. And that's at such a different tenor here that the major newspaper here commented it. Candidates, quote, lead with love, in the primaries. And even the two remaining candidates, one of them adopted the lead with love credo. And he wasn't trying to own it as himself. He would shout it back to me. But I'm telling you, René, we are coming into a time frame where people are tired of the ugly. They're tired of the ugly. They're tired of the disgusted whatever. In that particular primary, I was feeling kind of, styling. I came in 4th out of 7 mayoral candidates, so I felt kind of proud about that.
Yeah.
But that wasn't terrible for, a first-time candidate. But it's, again, I'm not a politician. However, I am a messenger. I am a translator. So when you talk about being disheartened by the ugliness of this last year, the spiritual physics dictate in this feminine time frame that we've got to change it up. People are sick and tired of it. And if a little yahoo like me, who's not even a politician, who's a lesbian psychic up in Montana, can run for mayor of the largest, one of the most conservative traditionally cities here, and have that slogan taken by all candidates regardless of their background, that tells you where we're at in the world.
That's not bad. That is not bad at all. I'm glad to hear that story. It is amazing, and I guess if we want change, then we have to change it. So you're right. A lot more people are getting involved. It's interesting, and I'm going to get off my soapbox here real quickly, but I am going to say I am excited to see that there are a lot of women running for office now, because I just think it's nice to have a balance. We certainly love our men and we love our male energy, but I think we also need that balance of the feminine.
And it's just about balancing, girl. You're absolutely right. It's just about balance. You can't have a scale tipped to one side all the time without breaking it, for God's sakes. You gotta just get the little levelers balanced out, and it's a happier scale.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned something earlier about, and this will be real quick because we got to go to break, but you mentioned something earlier about, people being interested in the collective. I worked on a television show. It was a women's news magazine on Lifetime some years ago called New Attitudes. It was on for a long time. You might or might not.
I remember that. Yes.
Anyway, we covered a story on women investors, and women were really beginning to get into the world of investments, and they did the study on what women invest in, and women, it seemed, would largely invest in things that not only would hopefully do well for them, but do well for society as a whole. And they found that by and large, their investments paid much better, percentage-wise, than investments had made in the past that just were made just strictly to make money. That they actually ended up making the money, but they also ended up helping the world. So I think, we could sort of look at it that way, that we're not giving away anything. We're just, we're actually gaining a lot more by helping out others. So that's my little soapbox, and we're going to take a quick break on that. And when we come back, more with psychic medium Danielle Egnew, and we're going to get into some real juicy paranormal stuff. So hang in there with us. Welcome back to Night Vision. I'm your host, René Barnett. If you're just joining us, we're talking tonight with psychic medium Danielle Egnew. She's promised us a year of transformation in 2018, and I think we're seeing that now. But Danielle, you've done a lot of interesting work in what is termed the paranormal. I don't know how paranormal it is. It may be normal. But I know that you've, what can you tell us? If you have any light to shed on, recently we've seen releases from the Pentagon on the fact that they had this project going to investigate UFOs. This was not the old Project Blue Book, but a more recent project. They didn't spend a whole lot of money on it looks like, but they did come out and say, that they've been studying this. We've seen videos that they had that show actual interplay between UFOs and aircraft and other things like that. People keep talking about this idea of disclosure. What do you see, if anything, coming down the pike in terms of disclosure?
Well, disclosure, love, it falls in the energy signature of unification or harmonization and accountability. And harmonization and accountability are two main signatures of the feminine time frame. And again, if we have gentlemen listening, you guys, it doesn't mean that, oh no, everybody's going to turn into women. It means that this is a time frame of rebuilding, nurturing, and coming together. So when we talk about disclosure, especially with the UFO phenomenon, we were supposed to get disclosure in 2017, actually 16 to 17, and that didn't happen. So one of the reasons that it didn't happen, and this is a sidebar, but everything's related, René, is that they were dialing in on the fact that we're dealing with some really real world issues right now with all kinds of interruptions, not just from Russia, but other countries. All this cyber world is erupting and blowing up and affecting all sorts of perceptions. And so that became a paramount issue to deal with. And on top of the fact that we've got, just to use a very overdone buzz phrase, Russia meddling in the election, then to bring up, oh, and by the way, there have been off-world races coming here for hundreds of thousands of years that all governments have been dealing with. And would you like to know the ones we're talking to? In addition to the fact that we have an outside-the-box president, in addition to the fact that we're dealing with Russia, in addition to the fact that if we pull one of these Russia investigator people up, we're going to pull up half of the government. There's so much going on right now that when you talk about disclosure, the government in many ways has disclosed. Yes, we have dealt with this, seen them. They just wrap it up in these weird little disclaimers of, we're just not really sure what that was. Or yes, we talked to a very tall white being, but it could have been somebody's uncle who was very pale. We don't really know. It's really stupid. But you hear this stuff all the time. And the fact of the matter is, we have been being assisted by off-worlders for many, many years, and different world governments have traded all kinds of technologies. And honestly, this goes on and on and on. So I would hope that we could get to a space in 19 to 20, I think more so when I look ahead in the future here. We can get to a space where the new normal is harmonization, unification, and collaborating, and also being accountable. And in those energy signatures, things like disclosure would be very normal because we're tired of the smoke and mirrors. The old world, as you were saying on break, is really, we're watching the death throes of an old 20th century and those who adhere to the modalities of the 20th century, who really truly believe that if they just yell loud enough that the 20th century will come back, they're sure of it. And I really have a lot of empathy for those people. I have compassion for those people because it ain't happening, man. That's like me sitting here just screaming into the wind, those steam engines are coming back and that Model T is going to make its comeback. No, it's not. Maybe for hobbyists, but no, it's not. So in terms of off-worlders and disclosure, guys, we have been dealing with off-worlders for as long as humans have been here. If you have a frontal cortex, you've got alien DNA in you. You've got off-world DNA in you. So, and that's most of humanity has that bone structure at this point. So we're going to be adjusting how we look at our place in the universe. And if there ever is a big threat of nuclear war, like for real, not just this stupidity that's on the news right now to keep everybody distracted, which that's all it is. But really, if we actually have a nuclear missile launched, you will watch those off-worlders come out in force because they use this planet too. And a nuclear explosion, especially now, the nuclear warheads we have now, René, literally the Titan missile, a Titan missile warhead, is detonated by a charge 3 times the size of the bomb we dropped on Hiroshima. That's the detonator.
That's the detonator. Gosh.
It needs that much power to blow it off. So if we unleash that much energy on this Earth, it changes ley lines, it changes geomagnetic centers on the Earth, and a lot of these off-world cultures use those geomagnetic centers to navigate, and they use Earth as a central jump point. So you really want to, if somebody wants to watch the aliens come out, just shoot off a nuclear missile at something, and they will come out and take care of that. And I know it sounds crazy, but all you got to do is look online at all the footage of the Cuban Missile tests and all the off-worlders that came and they were disabling the missiles because we were going to blow each other up. And they need the planet too.
I was going to ask you, what made you say that? Was it something that you're sensing? Was it something you've been told? But I guess you're saying it's something that we've seen before.
It is something that we've seen before. There's wonderful video footage that was released surrounding missile tests. And this was back in the, early 70s. And the missiles were being shot off from the Air Force Base here in Montana. And they were shooting these missiles and testing them. And these orbs of light, these missiles were going 5,000 miles an hour, roughly. And this ball of light would fly into the missile, and then you could see it on this video. It would just circle the missile, and the missile would just break apart and fall to the ground. And while it was circling the missile, it deactivated it. It completely took all of the detonation triggers out and just deactivated it. And we also have the British Air Force has documentation in the late 80s of several off-world craft, or UFOs, as we like to call them, that hovered right above those missile silos in the UK and unilaterally shut down all of the trigger mechanisms in all of the missiles at one time. Just shut them down.
Yeah, I think that was the Bentwaters case.
So they're not really too happy with the idea of us changing the electromagnetic guidance system that they've been using for, hundreds of thousands of years. I think that's a buzzkill. It's like somebody blowing up the main runway at LAX. It's just rude.
Well, I keep hearing people talking about, the government needs to disclose, the government's going to disclose, there's going to be disclosure, this, that, and the other. But it seems to me, and I've also heard, from others that, I'm not really waiting for the government to say anything. I think if there's going to be disclosure, the disclosure is going to be made by those that are visiting here.
That's right. And they were supposed to put out, and meaning they were supposed to, where am I getting that information? Well, I do a lot of chit-chatting with our off-world community. And we have some big global changes coming up, Lev. And I don't think you need to be a psychic to know that we've got climate change and all kinds of things are happening. And our off-world community has been assisting in siphoning off big bunches of electromagnetic buildup pressure, geomagnetic pressure from the Earth, so that we don't have to have these astronomically huge earthquakes. We're still having them, and we're going to continue to have them. Yet what we'll see is you're darn right. I mean, it's going to get to a point where the assistance that they're helping us. And if you, to use a really cheesy term, I don't have a better term for this. I mean, it takes a lot of energy to, if you want to call it cloak a ship or hide or whatever. These are humongous craft that are dealing with these issues. And eventually they're just going to get sick of it and be like, guys, just deal with your hysteria because we got bigger fish to fry than your perception of us. And you're absolutely correct in that the government, who was going to come out with some information at the end of the Obama era, they just didn't, because all of this upheaval was starting when they were finding out that we had problems with Russia and election, blah, blah, blah. That was starting way before the election happened. So they just kind of put that one under the bed. And so, yeah, you're right. I mean, people are going to start seeing craft uncloaking or whatever you want to call it. And we've already, have you noticed, okay, René, you follow UFOs,
Mm-hmm.
And have you noticed how many really great off-worlder videos will go up onto Google, and then you go to find them and pass them around Facebook, and it says, this has been removed for inappropriate content. And that's the only thing that's left on YouTube. And so a bunch of those videos went missing in 2017. And I mean, obviously you can tell a hoaxed video. These were really good, but those were the ones that would go missing.
I hadn't noticed that, but I'm going to start watching for that. That's pretty amazing. Now, that speaking of videos, that video that you were talking about a few moments ago of the orbs around, breaking up the missiles. Can you give us a clue as to where to find that, or maybe you can send it to me later and I'll post it?
My suggestion, you guys, is to just Google 1967 UFO Montana nuclear missile test. Because it'll come up. I saw it on television, and then I saw it online someplace, and this was a couple years ago. I wish that I would have saved the actual link to the video at the time, but there is documentation about that up at the Air Force Base here in Montana, and there's a lot. And that Air Force Base is up here by Great Falls, which is central in Montana, and of course, regrettably, Montana has a huge store of the country's nuclear missile silos because it's not a very populated state up here. So we've got a lot of off-world activity due to that alone.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely. Just watching the chat room here. Susan G says, I think they're trying to figure out how to tell us the truth without telling us all the truth. That's probably true.
I agree with that. Yep.
But how do they tell the truth without saying, okay, we lied? I guess that's the difficult part. But do you see a time coming when all this information will be made public and accepted as, okay, this is what's been going on? Or is it just going to be, it just has to be released in dribs and drabs, like the little bit that we got the other day?
Gal, I'm a betting girl. And I'll tell you what, my money is on the transformational energies of 2018 through 2020. These next 3 years are going to dramatically change how we form our consciousness in America. And I mean, in the United States anyway, and really around the world. But since we live in the United States, we're going to have huge changes in consciousness. And that doesn't mean it's going to be all happy unicorns. I mean, there's going to be some upsetting things that occur. Yet the other side of those upsetting things is a really harmonized way of moving forward. And so to answer your question, what I see is that people are going, the time frame of mystifying and demonizing, and the world is too small for that. The energies simply do not support it anymore. I mean, look at the negative news. People turn off the news. They turn off their Twitter feeds because there's this obsession with sensationalizing 20th century old world infighting. And people are sick of it. So yes, we are going to see more and more those videos before they get snapped down off of Google. We're going to see more and more of actual craft in the skies. We're going to see an increase in the normalization or mainstreamization, not a word, but it should be, of UFO phenomenon. And this is part of it. So it's not going to be dribbling. We've got big, fast changes coming. Big, fast changes, especially in the next 6 months. So my instincts, as well as just looking at what I'm looking at into the future time frames here, is that it's what used to be considered taboo, weird, bizarre, we shouldn't talk about it. That's going to be just everyday chat now. And that's something we can thank this shocking, polarizing year of 2017 for, is kind of shaking everybody out of this phone it in malaise that we've been in. And we're really dealing with what is actually there in our universe, which we're just one little bitty life form amongst many, many, many far more advanced civilizations. And even, René, when they poll people, and I don't know the exact number, shoot, I wasn't prepared with this number, yet I was just reading it the other day, and it's something around like 82%, don't quote me on that, but it's something, it's in the 80s somewhere, of people polled believe that there is actual intelligent, even superior technologies out there with other life forms. And really, we have a few discrepancies. Some people don't believe that, or a lot of very religious people see that as an abomination. I just think God's a huge artist, so why wouldn't God make off-worlders? Why not make everything if I'm God? I'd make everything.
Sure. I mean, it really just, to me, it's just common sense. I mean, when we think about, where we stand in the universe, I mean, we're a very young planet. We're even a young galaxy. There are millions and millions of other planets that are millions and billions of years older than our planet. Why would this be the only place that developed intelligent life? It just doesn't make any sense. And if other places have developed intelligent life and they are millions or billions of years older, then they've got that much of a jump on us technologically and hopefully, in all kinds of ways developmentally. So it makes much more sense to me that there would be than to think that there wouldn't be. It's kind of arrogant in a way to think, okay, we're the only ones in the universe. Why?
Well, and it's just kind of silly,
if you're a
right?
religious person, why would you limit God, that way? If you're talking about religion, I don't know. It just seems to make
All
sense.
right. Here, Gal, I found it. Not a video, but a CBS News article. Ex-Air Force personnel, UFOs deactivated nukes. And it's talking about Malmstrom Air Force Base up here in Montana and how in 1967, they found this phenomenon happened in Montana. So it's again, it's not a video, but and the piece of footage that I saw was from this particular issue. Stars and Stripes quoted former Air Force Captain Robert Salas, who was at Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana in 1967, when 10 ICMs he was overseeing suddenly became inoperative. At the same time, base security informed him of a mysterious red glowing object in the sky. And they had, and it was also happening to missiles they were shooting off. So that was right in that time frame. So I couldn't find your video, but I got the article there, guys. CBS News, ex-Air Force personnel UFO deactivates nukes.
Well, we've got an informed chat room going here because Oculus posted a little while back that Robert Salas was the guy who talks about those missile tests. So he knew that.
Right on, you guys.
Right on, Oculus. You're on the ball. All right. Well, now, when we talk about off-worlders and in other planets, now, are they really from other planets, or are they interdimensional, or are there different beings that are interdimensional and some from other planets?
It has been my observation of dealing with the folks that I've dealt with. Some of them really are from a different worlds. Some of them are from interdimensional worlds. We could call them interdimensional people or beings or creatures or whatnot. Yet they would appear alien because they are literally from another world. They're just from a different dimensional world. So technically speaking, that is an interdimensional. Yet we have interdimensionals that dwell here. I don't want to say on Earth, but in this Earth plane that come in and out of the Earth plane all the time because of the electromagnetic nature of the Earth. So we've got them all over the place. We've got them coming from the stars. We've got them coming through huge vortex points in the middle of the oceans, in the middle of the sun. A lot of these huge craft, they come through the center of stars because they've managed to create external hulls that are like mini atmospheres that protect these ships. I mean, the phenomenal way that these beings have created movement through the natural slipstreams of really magnetic vortexes through the universe is really incredible. So some are interdimensional and some are extraterrestrial or from other extraterrestrial three-dimensional worlds.
And we hear a lot in science now where they're finally agreeing that, there are parallel dimensions, there are parallel universes. And I guess, science is accepting some of these ideas that have sort of been looked at askance in the past. But if it's true that there are all these different beings running around us, basically sharing space with us, either that live around us or come to visit us here. Why is it that we as human beings have largely been blind to that, have largely been ignorant of that idea? Now, I know a lot of cultures, talk about star beings and different types of beings and creatures, but largely, the human population, society, doesn't know about these beings.
I would say that that's a Western world kink, love. I mean, like you said, the star beings of the Hopi, the star beings down there, and the Aboriginal cultures, a lot of indigenous nations. We have a lot of first world people, Native American people here in Montana. And a lot of these cultures readily accept the people from the stars. This is a Western world hang-up, and from what I can really identify, and I'm not blaming religion, yet what I can identify is that when we went through the Dark Ages, we took away science, we took away mysticism, and we began to control politically through the churches and use God as a hammer or a weapon that was going to just eradicate any alternative belief system. And then we spread from that point, and that was the dictating factor of that time. And that under that faction, many people were eliminated or killed. So the remaining people either had to get with the program and say, okay, nothing exists except for what's in the Bible, or they had to stay very, very quiet about what they found. And as we're going along, as we go century after century after century, and we put those ugly times of snuffing out science and culture in a rearview mirror, even though they're trying to resurrect that right now, it's not going to go anywhere, but they're trying really hard. We get this opportunity to come back to the fact that there's Easter Island, there's the pyramids, there's all of these magnificent pieces of rock sculpture in the Incan culture that shows beings driving off-world craft and breathing through oxygen hoses. And we're getting back, it's really hard to erase all of this amazing architecture that stands out so much. So I would say that if we had to use the word ignorant, I would say that our Western world cultures can tend to be fearful and are very driven or have been driven in the old, outmoded, imbalanced masculine time frame. At the end of the masculine time frame, it got very imbalanced there. It wasn't always imbalanced. And towards the end of the imbalanced masculine, it became about the one Hierophant that was the ruler. And you can't be having aliens coming and ruling the world. If you're the king who is ruling in the name of God, you're going to have a PR conflict, man. So it's my observation that a lot of that came about from the Dark Ages forward with the militarization of Christianity. And as that falls away, we're just kind of going back to what was actually there in the first place.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. It became a sin to think or talk about certain things or to be certain ways. And we had the burning of the witches and all that stuff going on. Anytime there was anything that, sort of smacked of the paranormal, it was made evil or demons or demonic, something like that. So I agree. I remember in the early 80s, when I first started really reading some stuff that sort of ran counter to, some of the church doctrine that I had, and most people had been taught their whole lives, it was kind of scary. It was thrilling because it opened things up so much and it sounded right, but it was kind of scary because I still had that pull of, girl, you're going to go straight to hell if you think about that, or if you talk about that, or if you start delving into those kind of matters. And I can remember as a young person, a child and a teenager, having some people, around me say, especially, in Oklahoma where I grew up, there's some things we're just not supposed to know about. And I would think, why? Why would that be? But I thought, well, I better heed that, because I don't want to go to hell.
Right.
But then later, learning more about history and about how, the church was formed and how, in essence, religion and Christianity was formed, I began to realize, basically, and not to insult anyone, please, Lord, because I do believe in God, but, it is a human construct. Religion is a human construct. Some people had to get together and write up these rules and decide what was good, what was evil, and all that. So if it's a human construct, then it's fallible. It's not necessarily true. And as another human being, I would think that one would be welcome to go out and find their own truth.
Well, and if you think about it, and I love this discussion because you want to talk about the biggest paranormal discussion of all is if you get into the mysticism of spirituality, and it transcends religion because the mysticism of spirituality is spiritual physics. It's physics. It's awesome. It's really fascinating. And you look at the way that we've gone about taking away people's belief systems to make the one God. And it's funny because then all of a sudden we create a God in our image. We create the God in the image of the middle manager that wants to run around and tell on everybody and rule people out for making mistakes. And did you know that do you know how many times the word hell is used in the Old Testament?
No.
Zero.
Yeah. I was just
Zero times.
Probably none.
None, because it was not, it was a construct that came about when a reference to a valley was made in the New Testament, and the valley was where they actually burned bodies and trash, and there were some pretty hardcore indigenous world religions that did live sacrifices there, and it was just an icky, smelly valley. And Christ made this comment like, well, you're going to put yourself in this icky, smelly valley by having these behaviors, meaning it was an analogy for just, doing something icky on the inside of the self. And as it got translated from the High Greek, which, by the way, there was no good English reference for the High Greek that the Old Testament was originally written in. And then it goes down the pike, and pretty soon we get the word hell as somewhere out of burning or fire. And finally, we've got scholars who came back out and said, guys, they weren't talking about this place under the ground where the devil lived in hell. It was an analogy for this valley. I mean, but boy, what a power.
-advisor.com. But do you also book by the phone? What do we need to do, Danielle, to get you?
Oh, you guys just pop on there. You'll see a big old prompt, whether you're on a handheld device or a computer, schedule a reading, and it will take you to an online scheduling calendar, which is super handy. And you can just choose a time frame that you want a reading for, and you punch in wherever you're located in the world, and it will actually translate my time frame to your time frame, so you don't have to do the time zone conversion because that's a pain in the keister.
Oh, that's cool.
I know, right? It's so handy. And I'll just throw this out there. René and I were talking about this briefly at the break. I don't actually do Skype readings, you guys, and there's a reason for it. I do so much translation for angelic beings. These angels are huge. And I usually translate for 2 to 3 of them at a time. The electromagnetic yield that is tossed off of these beings when they are communicating is humongous. And it has a tendency to knock the Skype off, the video. It takes a lot of bandwidth to transmit video, and it'll just knock the Skype off. And then you got to recall and blah, blah, blah. So a lot of people's readings is trying to reestablish the Skype connection. So I do phone readings, and they're just as fabulous as a Skype reading, only we don't have to call back 16 times during the reading because we don't lose the signal.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So just pop onto your website then, and I'm sure there's an icon for to make an appointment, and then you can just choose the available time and book it.
That's absolutely true. And if you guys aren't up for readings but love a little education, I've got a blog called calltolight.org. It's at calltolight.org, and you can read extensively about the spiritual physics of the feminine time frame there and a million zillion other things. You can find articles I've written on off-worlders and just all kinds of craziness. And then I've got a YouTube channel also if you're into watching videos. I haven't been keeping up on it as much as I should, but I do have a YouTube channel.
I love your videos. I love the one when you were in the bathrobe with your big mug of coffee and your hair all over your head and, trying to make some sense out of what was going on and talking us all out of the trees. It was great. I love it. That's my favorite picture of you. I posted a picture from that video on my Facebook page today because I thought it was so cute.
That's awesome.
Now, I got a couple questions for you from the chat room. Haley S. wants to know, are we going to see an improvement in our climate condition in 2018?
Well, we are going, I can't say improvement, love. I wish I could say improvement. We are going to see a huge improvement in how human beings address the climate issue in 2018. How about that? Because our Earth is on a particular trajectory and it's going to be doing what it's doing. The best shot we've got at augmenting climate issues. And there's going to be a lot of you listening that are going to be like, okay, now I thought she was nuts, but now I've decided she's completely wearing a tinfoil hat and she's completely out there. When I say this, yet this is actually a physics issue. It's a science issue. The best shot we have at improving our weather is to bring a restful consciousness to our planet. We are electromagnetic semiconductors. Every single human being on the earth is like a tiny radio tower, and there are 7 billion of us. And when a majority of us are in discord or freaking out, we are literally putting a ton of discordant or chaotic electromagnetic frequencies into the upper atmosphere. That's the ionosphere, and it does affect the weather. We are also deeply connected to Mother Gaia, Mother Earth. All humans are empaths. Even sociopaths are really good empaths. They can figure out what you want and what you need and become anything for you. They just don't particularly have an emotional attachment to that ability. So if we watch our emotionality and we get our bubble between the lines and we come out of this little guinea pig jumping in the cage out of hysteria, every headline that comes up, and we begin to usher in a time frame of harmony and peace within each one of us, that is the best shot we've got at mellowing out the weather. The planet is to a place of warmth at this point where we're going to be just seeing the natural effects of that. But we don't have to put our foot on the accelerator pedal with all of this chaos, hysteria, and continued junk into the atmosphere. So that's what we can do in this upcoming many years to help the trajectory of our Earth, is stop being hysterical.
Oh, that's not easy.
No, it's not. That is my life mission, is to try to help everybody keep that bubble between the lines, because we affect our planet way more than we are willing to admit.
You know, I think the older I get, the more I kind of get that. Even certain places, I think people that, there's an energy exchange that goes on, I believe, between people and the earth. And in certain locations, I think, it has a stronger effect than others. Maybe it's the telluric currents, maybe it's other things. But I do believe that we do have an effect. Our earth has an effect on us and vice versa.
Very much so.
Yeah. Now, Susan G. brought up a question. We've heard from different sources, whether it be from psychic mediums, and she happened to mention that in the movie Bloodline in my film, where we were talking with a member of the so-called secret society Priory of Zion, and he referred to a coming event and an apocalyptic event. Well, apocalypse, actually, if you really get down to the meaning of the word, means revelation. But, I guess it could also be a huge, change or huge upheaval. And we keep hearing about these references. Is there something that you're aware of that's, a big coming major, huge event? I keep getting the impression they're speaking about something like an asteroid collision or something with the planet, but I'm not sure what that coming event might be. But are you aware of anything like that, or do you know at all what I'm referring to?
Love, yes. And I would put it to you this way. We live on a moving rock. The center of our planet is liquid. And we think, we don't even know what's in there. Who knows? It could be cheese. We just don't know. But we know there's magma in there somewhere. And with the way that the Earth is heating, and with the very, very gradual, and it is very, very gradual, every year we lose just by a minuscule amount really our atmosphere. And our gravitational atmosphere. And it's like teensy weensy. It's not like next year it's all going to fly off the planet and everybody's going to fly into space. But it does affect the pull of the Earth. And so what I'm getting an opportunity to see from now until really early 2020 is really big geothermal events These are big expulsions into the atmosphere. These are humongous volcanoes going off. And we have and when those volcanoes go off and we do relieve pressure out of the earth on one side, I mean, if you think about it, you guys, the plates of the earth, when I look at the earth, the energy of the earth, it's fascinating. And we're just basically, the plates of the earth are like a Dairy Queen cone, the chocolate part that you dip in there. I mean, that's how thin they are compared to the rest of what's actually going on with the planet. And so when we've got the internal part of the earth heating up or melting or whatever, it moves everything on the top of the Dairy Queen cone. I mean, remember when you were a little kid and you'd be eating part of the cone and then all of a sudden the whole chocolate thing would start to slide? It'd be like, what's happening? So it's not like we're going to have a apocalyptic, oh God, the whole earth is sliding off of itself kind of thing. Yet we are going to see in our lifetime, even in the next several years, we're going to notice those ocean levels, and we're going to notice that the clean water that we had access to, we're having some troubles with that. And I'm not here to frighten everybody, you guys, okay? I'm not one of those doom and gloom psychics, and I'll tell you that is a peeve in my field. People who, you can make a ton of money being a doom and gloom psychic, and I just refuse to do that. What I'm saying is, here we are, right? So how do we deal with this? And yes, there are some big events coming, but it doesn't mean go bury yourself with 60 cans of beans in your bomb shelter. It means live your life and be a productive member of turning this ship around so that when we do encounter these difficulties, we're not all out for number one, hiding in our bomb shelters, and we've made a collective effort to make it better. So yeah, we've got some ripples in the continuum, Lev, but we'll get through it. We'll get through it.
But more in the lines of, earth upheavals, not necessarily asteroids, slamming into us from outer space.
Well,
it's always a possibility.
If we did have an asteroid, that would actually create the same type of atmosphere that I've seen, which is a very low-hanging purple sky with a lot of things on fire. However, that can also be created by a volcano going off, or a lot of different things will create that kind of a low-hanging cloud that is that dark. So I hope it's not an asteroid. My God, that'll be rough.
That wouldn't be good at all. No. Now, Max has a question. He says, we know that there are entities out there that may be smarter than us and less smart than us. Where do we as humans fall on the intelligence bandwidth, and are we going up or down in the intelligence department?
What a great
I hope we're going up.
No, that's a really great question. And the best I could do to answer that the most accurately is to say that there are different kinds of intelligence. There's intellectual intelligence, there's emotional intelligence, there's spiritual intelligence. Now, believe it or not, human beings rate very high on the emotional and spiritual intelligence if we are left to our own devices and we're not busy being programmed by other human beings into weird modalities. Our actual physics, our spiritual physics, our DNA indicates that we are high on the emotional IQ level. Problem is, we've been taught to not trust ourselves, and we've been taught that there's only one type of spirituality, whatever that one is out there. Right. And so we've cut ourselves off of our primary intelligence source. There are other beings out there who, in terms of understanding the universe, would technically rank way above us in intellectualization, but it's only because they've had access to far greater data for hundreds, if not millions of years. So therefore, their extensive knowledge dictates that they just simply would know more. However, their fascination with human beings is that we are so connected to one another. Human beings' ability to put compassion before all things is fascinating to many, many different off-world species. They're fascinated by the fact that we're this collective where we Bluetooth together. We don't even know we're doing it. We act in a mass way, yet we're not even aware of it. They're deeply fascinated by that. So we do rank up there in a few areas.
We've heard that a lot, that, they're observing us and to learn about our emotional being, that is something that they're not quite as in tune with, or maybe not in tune with at all. And you hear stories about people who tell of, alien interaction or, abduction or experience, whatever you want to call it. And you hear about people talking about them being taken in a room with a bunch of babies, of small beings, and being asked to hug the babies and hold the babies. And they needed that human touch. And so I think that is how we may be unique in the world, or in the universe, I guess. But if that's true, then does that mean we have more to fear from the off-worlders because they're not emotional, or less to fear because they're not emotional?
That is a great question. Less to fear. Because there was only really one race that was noodling with people on a regular basis, and we like to call them the Greys. And the Greys are an offshoot of a very ancient race that literally genetically noodled with themselves so much. Think of like an extreme religious sect, really, that was noodling with its genetics in order to make this ergonomic, perfect being. And they took out too much of the genome. Kind of like, if you look at a tomato that has been genetically engineered, it doesn't smell as good and it doesn't taste as good. Because the gene you take out that attracts the bugs also takes out the smell and the taste, right? So they over-extracted, and we have the base DNA from many off-world cultures, primarily from the Sirius AB star system, are our primary contributors to our DNA as we look today. And so these beings share different types of DNA with us. That's where you saw the abductions and the egg extractions and all these things. But that really stopped in the very late 60s, very early 70s, because the Greys recognized that they could not reintroduce that genome strain. It didn't work. And the Greys, they're the most, in my opinion, and this sounds racist as all can be, but they're the most cold ones that I deal with. But that was part of what they noodled out of their genetics, was anything that didn't absolutely positively have to be there. It makes them very ergonomic. So when the genome harvested from human beings was not improving their situation, they quit abducting people because it wouldn't work, So they're like, okay, well, I guess we'll just die off or do whatever we're going to do. So yes, I mean, we do see that we as people don't have a lot to fear from off-worlders, really, because if they were going to take the world over, they surely would have done it before we made the oceans so dirty, for crying out loud.
Oh, you would think. Now, you said that we have all this off-world DNA in us, especially from particular star systems. How did we get that? Was it through interbreeding, or was it through the process of panspermia with, bacteria being dropped through meteorites and asteroids to Earth and creating life? How did we get that DNA?
Honestly, that I do not know. And I do know that it got introduced right around the time old Cro-Magnon man started popping up miraculously all over the world at one time. And if you follow evolution, you'll have an anomalous strain that then reproduces and creates another anomalous strain. And that could take a couple of 100,000 years, and it comes from one area and spreads. Yet all of a sudden we had all this Cro-Magnon man popping up all over the place on the coastal regions of the world. And then they turned around and interbred and wiped out the indigenous populations in a very short amount of time, in about less than 1,000 years. And so that doesn't really follow the natural evolutionary pattern. And then we have these weird anomalies in our body, like the proteins in our eyeballs are not made of the same protein that our flesh is made out of. And we're still trying to figure out how human eyes came about, because they're made of this weirdo material that's really not found anywhere else. And so it's an interesting thing. And I'm a science junkie. I love this stuff. So I couldn't tell you exactly how, like if it was just like a wild night on Earth and what happens on Earth stays on Earth and whack-a-doo, here it comes, or if they just said, hey, let's just go ahead and meld this. Here, really quickly on that note, the Bible story of the wise men. Actually, they didn't even say they were wise men. They were called the Magi. They were magical people. We don't even know their genders, actually. And when they came to deliver their goods to baby Jesus, the wise men's account that was translated, that was found in the Vatican Library and just kind of hid up in a shelf somewhere, refers to a star that came down and spoke. Not quite child, not quite star. It was this being of some kind that came down and spoke. So I'm not here to take away from the divinity of Christ or the birth of Christ or any of that, because obviously Christ was a human being. However, it's very interesting when you read other takes on this same phenomenon and you talk about off-worlders.
It's true. I mean, I think that came up just recently in a show. Someone brought up that whole Christmas story and about how, that star, that they were following, maybe it wasn't a star at all. Maybe it was something else. And it does kind of make sense. I mean, how could they follow the star, and that stayed in the, it just doesn't make any sense to me.
Especially considering they tracked them back. They came from China, not the Middle East. I mean, what is now China? So can you imagine just trekking it over from China and heading over to Bethlehem? Hey, let's take a walk. I don't know. Let's go just follow this random star. I mean, there was a lot going on for these other cultures to have been informed that there was a being that was coming to change the consciousness of the world in some way. And I'm not here preaching religion here. I'm just saying, if we're talking about off-worlder influence or what is God or any of this, the minute we stop putting God in a box, the minute we stop putting our existence in a box, we get to see the universe far more clearly, in my opinion.
Something else just occurred to me in the story in the Bible, in as it's told and been told throughout time. These magi brought with them gifts of gold and frankincense and myrrh, and that's just something that sort of just slides by, just sort of an aside, all these wonderful things they're bringing. But I wonder if there was something to that. I mean, you always hear about gold in terms of, alchemy and that sort of thing. And then these other substances, frankincense and myrrh. I wonder if there was something magical behind those gifts.
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, frankincense itself, you can chew it. It's a resin, and most people burn it as incense, yet it's they call it Arab gum. And you chew it, and it can go into your system, and it cleanses the body. It is a fortifier. It has tons of antioxidants in it. It kills germs like crazy. So frankincense on a physical level cleanses the body. On a metaphysical level or a vibrational level, it really does resonate out lower vibration. So you've got this ultimate cleanser. So let's say, for the sake of argument, that there's a star being that plops down and maybe amalgamates with a baby body, or who knows what happens. But this being is like, oh my God, I'm in a human body. So I'm going to bring you frankincense, and it's going to stabilize the body. It's going to cleanse you. And you that just entered this body, you're not going to be seen as a pathogen because now the body is supported. Myrrh is also an organ cleanser. And you have to go easy if you ingest myrrh, because you drink too much of it, it'll make you sick. Yet myrrh is a cleanser also. So it's a physical issue, and you can rub myrrh on the skin, and it can be a topical antibiotic. And then you bring gold in, and who knows, maybe they just felt bad for these two unwed kids having babies out of wedlock and said, "Here, kids, you need some money. Go knock a door down of a real inn." But gold also, if you look at off-world cultures, a lot of gold was harvested not for its monetary value, but they can, what do you want to call this? Break down the chemical elements in gold, and it turns into fuel for a lot of the core systems in the craft that they drive. So they'll harvest gold from all over the place just because the elements they can pull apart and use them as fuel. So maybe they thought the star baby needed to go back to where it came from. So they gave it some gold to fuel up. Who knows?
Wow. Could be. One quick last question, because the music is just getting ready to start, if it hasn't already. Ralph says, are we all star seeds or star children?
It is my observation. Yes, we are. I think there are probably some indigenous, actual, real, only evolved here hominin human beings living in an Amazonian forest someplace. But most of we who have populated and conquered and gone forward, again, if you've got a frontal cortex, you can thank your off-world pals for that contribution to our DNA.
All right. Thank you so much.